The front door slammed with a violence that echoed through the quiet house, sending a sharp tremor through the walls and rattling the framed photographs that lined the hallway. His chest was still tight with rage, breath coming fast and shallow, as if the argument from the office had followed him home and was now pacing just behind his eyes. His suit jacket hung crookedly from one shoulder, his tie loosened and twisted like it had tried to escape his grip during the drive. The meeting replayed itself in his mind on a cruel loop. Investors questioning his decisions, partners exchanging looks heavy with doubt, a single careless comment about declining confidence that had burned deeper than any open insult. He had built everything with his own hands, worked nights no one saw, sacrificed weekends, birthdays, and sleep, and yet today they had looked at him like he was already a mistake. By the time he reached his driveway, his hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, jaw locked so tight it ached, his thoughts sharpened into blame. He needed silence, obedience, order, something that did not question him. As he stepped inside, ready to unleash his fury on the first sign of disorder, something unexpected struck him and knocked his anger off balance. The air smelled warm, sweet, and unfamiliar, not of bleach or detergent, but of fresh bread and cinnamon, a scent so out of place it irritated him instantly. His brows furrowed as his anger searched for a target and briefly found none. He took another step, shoes still on, scanning the hallway for the chaos he assumed must exist if the cleaning lady was wasting time cooking. Instead, the floor gleamed, shoes were lined neatly by the wall, and the usual clutter of toys was arranged into careful piles. That only fueled him more. Order without permission felt like rebellion. Then he heard it. Laughter. Not loud or wild, but soft, genuine laughter, floating from the living room like something alive. He froze. His children were usually silent when he came home, absorbed in screens, startled by his presence. This laughter was different, relaxed, unguarded. His footsteps slowed despite his will, anger dragging behind him as curiosity pulled him forward. From the doorway, unseen, he watched. The cleaning lady sat on the rug, her skirt folded beneath her, surrounded by his children who sat cross-legged, eyes wide, faces glowing with attention. She spoke animatedly, hands moving through the air as if shaping invisible worlds, her voice rising and falling in a rhythm that held them captive. His son leaned forward, elbows on his knees, completely lost. His daughter hugged a pillow to her chest, smiling in a way he hadn't seen in weeks. There was no television on, no tablets, no noise except her voice and their occasional bursts of laughter. A sharp surge of rage flared in him again, hotter now, offended. He paid her to clean, not to entertain. He worked himself to exhaustion to give his children everything, and here she was, stealing time, blurring boundaries, doing what was not her place. His mouth opened, words lining up like bullets, ready to remind everyone who was in charge. But before a single sound escaped, something stopped him. The children weren't just listening. They were responding, asking questions, interrupting with excitement, finishing her sentences as if they shared a private language. The room felt different, warmer, calmer, like the air itself had softened. His anger faltered, confused, looking for the chaos it expected and finding only peace. He noticed a small table nearby, set with sliced fruit, juice poured neatly into cups, crumbs wiped clean. He noticed his daughter's school bag open, homework completed and stacked carefully inside. He noticed how steady his own breathing had become without his permission. The rage that had carried him all the way home suddenly felt excessive, like shouting in a place meant for whispers. Still, pride pushed him forward. He cleared his throat loudly, deliberately. The story stopped mid-sentence. All three heads turned at once. His children's faces lit up instantly, joy spilling out without hesitation. "Dad, you're home," they exclaimed, scrambling to their feet. There was no fear in their eyes, no guilt, only excitement. The cleaning lady stood quickly, smoothing her apron, her expression respectful and calm, not defensive. That unsettled him more than anything else. He wanted to scold, to demand answers, to reclaim authority, yet as he looked at his children, truly looked at them, he felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. They looked happy, present, alive in a way he rarely witnessed anymore. The words he had prepared felt suddenly too loud for the room. He stood there, briefcase heavy in his hand, anger hovering uncertainly, as if it had lost its direction. The scent of warm bread lingered, the last echo of laughter still hanging in the air, and for the first time that day, he did not know what to say. His voice finally came, sharp and controlled, cutting through the softness of the room like a blade he was used to wielding. He asked why the cleaning wasn't finished, why stories were being told instead of work being done, why the house smelled like a bakery when he paid for order and efficiency. Each question landed harder than the last, fueled by a day of swallowed anger, by the need to feel in control of something, anything. The children's smiles faded instantly, confusion replacing joy as they looked from him to the cleaning lady, unsure of which world they were supposed to belong to now. She listened without interrupting, hands folded in front of her, posture calm, eyes steady, as if she had expected this storm and decided long ago not to run from it. When he finally stopped speaking, the silence felt heavier than his words. He waited for excuses, apologies, maybe even fear. Instead, she answered quietly, explaining that the floors were already clean, the laundry folded, the bathroom scrubbed, the beds made. She spoke not defensively, but factually, as if listing completed tasks from memory. Then she added, gently, that the children had come home restless and tired from school, overwhelmed and irritable, and she had asked if they wanted to sit for a few minutes while the bread baked. The word bread irritated him again, a symbol of distraction, yet he noticed the oven timer ticking softly, proof of time passing, of planning. His son tugged on his sleeve then, small fingers clinging as if to anchor him, and eagerly explained that the story was about a man who built something so big he forgot the people around him. His daughter chimed in, saying the man learned a lesson at the end, her eyes shining as if she had discovered something important. The entrepreneur felt a strange tightening in his chest, an uncomfortable pressure he didn't recognize at first. He snapped that this was not part of the job description, that he hired help to clean, not to play or teach lessons. The words sounded harsher than he intended, echoing in the room with an ugliness that startled even him. The cleaning lady nodded slowly, accepting his authority without surrendering her dignity. She said she understood completely, and that she would finish up quickly and leave early if that was what he wanted. There was no bitterness in her voice, no sarcasm, only a quiet willingness that somehow felt heavier than resistance. The children reacted immediately. Their shoulders drooped, their faces fell, disappointment spreading across them like a shadow. His daughter's lip trembled, and his son looked at the floor, suddenly very interested in his own shoes. That reaction pierced him in a way no boardroom insult ever had. Something cracked inside him, small but undeniable. He remembered coming home as a child to empty rooms, to quiet evenings broken only by television noise, to parents too tired to listen. He remembered the promise he had made to himself back then, swearing that success would not cost him his family. Standing there now, surrounded by evidence of care he had not provided, that promise rose up to confront him. He looked around the room again, seeing it differently this time. A crayon drawing taped crookedly to the wall that hadn't been there in the morning, his name written in uneven letters with a heart drawn too big for the space. His daughter's math homework neatly corrected, small encouraging notes written in the margins. The absence of screens, the calm order, the way the children hovered close instead of shrinking away. These were not signs of disobedience. They were signs of attention. His anger wavered, suddenly unsure of its purpose. He exhaled slowly, a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His voice, when he spoke again, was lower, rougher, stripped of its edge. He asked what the story was about. The cleaning lady hesitated, glancing briefly at the children as if seeking permission, then explained in careful words about a man who chased success so fiercely that he forgot how to listen, forgot the faces of those who loved him most. With every sentence, he felt exposed, as if the story had been written with his name erased at the last moment. The children watched him closely now, reading his face, measuring his reaction with a seriousness that made him uneasy. For the first time all day, he did not feel powerful. He felt transparent. The rage that had carried him home began to dissolve, leaving behind something heavier and harder to define. He looked at the cleaning lady, really looked at her, noticing the tired kindness in her eyes, the calm strength in the way she stood. He realized then that he had walked into his house ready to fight a world that had bruised his ego, only to find himself confronted by the parts of life he had neglected. The silence that followed was not awkward but full, pressing him to choose what kind of man he wanted his children to remember. He lowered himself to the floor slowly, the expensive fabric of his suit creasing as he bent, an unfamiliar position for a man who usually stood above others both physically and in status. The movement surprised the children, their eyes widening as they instinctively shifted closer, one on each side of him, their small bodies warm and trusting against his arms. The cleaning lady paused mid-motion, uncertainty flickering across her face, but when he gave a slight nod, she understood and continued. Her voice filled the room again, softer now, carrying the weight of meaning rather than performance. The story unfolded with quiet clarity, describing how the man in the tale chased numbers and applause, mistaking noise for importance, until his own voice grew louder than his ability to hear. As she spoke, images rose uninvited in his mind. Late nights at the office, unanswered messages, school events missed with promises of next time, bedtime kisses replaced by hurried waves from the door. His jaw tightened, not in anger this time, but in recognition. The children leaned into him more, as if sensing the shift, as if they had been waiting for this moment without knowing it. When the story reached its end, there was no dramatic flourish, only a quiet lesson left hanging in the air like a mirror. Silence settled over the room, thick but gentle. He cleared his throat, feeling exposed in a way success had never made him feel. He asked where she had learned to tell stories like that, his voice carrying curiosity instead of command. She smiled faintly and said her grandmother had raised her while her parents worked long hours, and stories had been how they filled the empty evenings, how they learned to survive loneliness together. The word survive echoed painfully inside him. He realized then that his children were not missing toys or opportunities, they were missing him. The oven timer beeped, sharp and sudden, breaking the spell. The cleaning lady stood, moved to the kitchen, and returned with a loaf of bread wrapped in a cloth, steam rising as she cut into it. The smell deepened, rich and comforting, reaching somewhere far beneath his carefully constructed defenses. She handed pieces to the children first, who accepted them eagerly, blowing on the crust, laughing softly. Then she offered him a slice. He hesitated, and used to being included without formality, then took it. The first bite caught him off guard. It was simple, imperfect, warm, tasting of patience and time. Something tightened behind his eyes, an emotion he refused to name. He swallowed and nodded, a silent acknowledgement that felt heavier than any contract he had ever signed. The children watched him closely, as if his reaction mattered more than the bread itself. He surprised himself by smiling, a real smile that felt strange on his face. He asked her about the recipe, and she explained it was old, passed down, forgiving if you treated it gently. The word forgiving stayed with him. He found himself laughing quietly at the irony of it all. Him, a man who demanded perfection, undone by something that thrived on patience. Without checking his phone, without glancing at his watch, he sat there, present, as minutes passed unnoticed. The children began drawing again, occasionally holding up their pictures for him to see, and each time he responded, fully, without distraction. He felt the tension in his shoulders ease, the constant hum of urgency fade into the background. He realized how rare this feeling was, how foreign it had become to simply exist without chasing the next task. He asked the cleaning lady to stay a little longer, to keep doing exactly what she was doing. The request felt awkward, like learning a new language, but it was sincere. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. The children cheered softly, their joy uncomplicated and honest. He leaned back against the couch, his children still close, and for the first time in years, he felt the quiet satisfaction of being needed in a way money could not provide. Outside, the light shifted toward evening, shadows stretching across the floor, marking time he would usually have missed. Inside, something fundamental had changed. The rage that had driven him home now felt distant, almost irrelevant, replaced by a calm awareness that frightened and grounded him all at once. He understood then that success had taught him how to build companies, but this moment was teaching him how to build something far more fragile and far more important. As the evening light slowly softened and spilled across the living room floor, he became aware of how different the house felt, as if it had exhaled along with him, and settled into a quieter rhythm. The children sat nearby, absorbed in their drawings, occasionally glancing up to make sure he was still there, still part of their world, and each time their eyes met his, they smiled with an ease that made his chest ache. The cleaning lady moved gently around the room, tidying without urgency, humming under her breath, a simple sound that filled the spaces his anger used to occupy. He watched her for a moment, realizing how easily he had dismissed the value of what could not be measured or scheduled. Acting on an impulse that felt both strange and necessary, he reached for his phone and called his assistant, canceling the evening calls without offering an explanation, his voice firm but calm, as if this decision required no justification. When he ended the call, he placed the phone face down on the table, a small but symbolic act that felt heavier than any deal he had closed that week. He suggested ordering dinner, not just for himself and the children, but for everyone in the house. And when the cleaning lady hesitated, unsure of her place, the children immediately protested, insisting she stay. He backed them up without thinking, surprising himself again. Around the table, takeout containers replaced spreadsheets, and conversation flowed in uneven but honest bursts. The children talked about school, about the story, about things he had never known they cared about, and he listened without interrupting, without steering the conversation back to himself. The cleaning lady shared small details of her life when invited, nothing dramatic, just enough to remind him that every person carried a world of their own. He found himself laughing, genuinely, the sound unfamiliar but welcome. As the meal ended, he noticed how full he felt in a way food alone could not explain. When it was time for her to leave, he walked her to the door instead of retreating into his office as he usually would. He thanked her, the words clumsy but sincere, and then asked if she would return, not just to clean, but to continue spending time with the children as she had today. She looked at him steadily, measuring not his wealth but his intent, and said she would, as long as there was respect and clarity. He agreed without hesitation, understanding the weight of that condition. After she left, the house felt quieter but not empty. He helped the children get ready for bed, fumbling slightly with routines he rarely handled, brushing teeth too slowly, listening to stories that wandered in sleepy circles. He tucked them in himself, lingering longer than usual, answering questions he often postponed, promising nothing except that he would be there. When he finally turned off the lights and stepped into the hallway, the house wrapped around him in a calm he had almost forgotten existed. He stood there alone for a moment, replaying the day not from the boardroom, but from the living room floor, understanding how close he had come to missing it entirely. The rage that had driven him home now felt like a warning rather than a flaw, a signal that something in his life had been out of balance. He realized that being left speechless was not humiliation, but an invitation to listen, to learn, to rebuild. As he moved toward his bedroom, the scent of bread still faint in the air, he felt a quiet resolve settle in his chest. Tomorrow would bring meetings, pressures, and demands, but tonight had given him something stronger than control. It had given him perspective, and for the first time in a long while, he went to sleep knowing he had chosen the right kind of success.